Hey, Alex. Hey, Barry. How goes?
All right. So it's on my upstairs computer, but I updated Zoom and it doesn't run on my upstairs computer. I'm gonna have to diagnose it. I had to move downstairs.
I'm downstairs for the same reason. I started Zoom upstairs and it was taking longer than usual to update. They must have released something the last few hours.
They did an update because I did an update yesterday, and after the update, it didn't restart, and I didn't bother to diagnose that. And when I try to launch it, it started to launch and then it quit. So I'm going to have to try to reinstall it or go back to an older version or something. I don't know what. All I know is that the update doesn't run.
So I'm on my Linux machine right now where it seems to be running so far.
Yeah, well, you might, if you do plan to update it, you might want to save or have access to the previous version, maybe, if the new version is buggy.
Okay. All right. Alex, how many hours sleep do you get?
We're not here,
mute.
Alex.
Your mic is probably not working.
Yeah. You're not muted, so I'm guessing your mic issue is recurring from the same as before.
Yeah.
Testing.
And now we hear you.
We do hear you now.
Okay. It defaults to my family 17H audio controller, which is not the webcam I should be using. I wish you could fix that. I wish it was able to, you had a selection there where you could choose which microphone you wanted to use on a permanent basis.
I would think that if you go into your system settings or your Zoom audio, there ought to be a way to select the default and make it permanent.
No, all I've got is select mic. There's a tab down below that it says automatically adjust your volume and suppress background noise. That's all I got.
It may also be at the operating system level what you set your default to.
That could be the issue.
Anyway, I am almost gleeful this week. There's only one topic that seems to be fun to talk about.
The one on the national politics?
There's never been a better raid. It was a beautiful raid. It was a perfect raid. People tell me they've never seen a raid that happened any better than that raid.
Yeah. I'll tell you, talk about being in denial. And in this case, it's pretty clear that he's not self-deluded. He knows exactly what's happening, and he's being deceptive. His denial is disingenuous, I guess is the right word.
How many times has he lied now?
Oh,
20, 30,000 times? Maybe more?
Who can count the number of times? I mean,
Well, for a while there, somebody was actually keeping track.
yeah, I mean, at first you had to say, is he self-deluded or does he know he's lying? And at the beginning, you couldn't really resolve. You couldn't get enough information about what's going on inside of his head.
He thinks he
If he was self-deluded, but now it's pretty clear. He's been told by practically everybody close to him that nobody believes him and he should know better. And he's just basically dissembling, knowingly dissembling.
And there's still 70 million people who are still trying to support him.
And the fact that he took the fifth, how many, 400 times in that deposition?
At least 440 times.
Yeah, that really is evidence that he knows damn well that he can't afford to tell the truth because it'd be self-incriminating.
Well, I'm hoping this is just not too boring for Alex or anybody else, but this is a positive moment that was long coming.
Yeah.
We thought this would never happen, but Merrick Garland, hey, now he's got to follow this up with other more decisive, assertive moves.
Yeah. Garland is playing this chess game very, very ingeniously.
We'll see. Up to now, he's done apparently visibly very little, but it must be behind the scenes,
That's very intentional because it's against policy to leak investigative information. It's not only against policy, it's just dumb to leak that kind of stuff. And he was following the protocol with precision.
Of course. Hey, Donald, we're going to come raid you on Wednesday.
Did they find some documents there that were removed from the White House?
Yes.
They found many.
11 boxes, and they released the inventory because there's a list of the documents, not in terms of the detailed content, but their level of classification. So there were the two highest levels of classification. I can't remember how many documents.
There's only two, secret and top secret.
No, there's actually many more.
Top secret and compartmentalized.
SCI, special compartmented information or something.
Yeah, this is stuff like nuclear weapon
sensitive
information.
For no one's eyes only.
Look, there's confidential, then there's secret, then there's top secret, then there's something called compartmented, and this is above top secret. And compartmental basically means you have to have a very specific need to know. These are more horizontal access. Compartmented is very much verticalized.
And they have to be kept in a secure location where nobody can get into that location unless they're authorized to see the documents in that location.
And every document is checked in and checked out to the minute and to the actual person. So it's very carefully kept.
Right.
Who's allowed to declassify those documents?
The president has the power, but he has to be in office when he declassifies them. And there has to be a formal procedure to mark the documents as having been declassified on a given date and who approved it. And these documents were still marked as classified. There's always a stamp saying this document has been declassified as of this date and who's now allowed to see it.
That's where Congress should have a say.
They did have a say. They passed that law. That's the statute that Congress passed.
But I mean, they should have a say for each document that's removed from the White House.
Oh, no, that's not true. No, you can't do that because you can talk about 500 people looking at a document that's classified to say whether or not it should be declassified. That's first of all, you can't do that. I mean, the congressman can't look at a classified document unless it's been already declassified for them to look at.
But even if you don't know what the document contains, the fact that on the surface, on the cover of the envelope, it says classified document. So you know whether or not that document's allowed to be taken out of the White House.
And
Donald knew what he was doing. He intentionally removed many classified documents at the top secret and SCI level. And he is getting his comeuppance.
The National Archives, which is responsible for storing these documents, observed that they were missing these documents. First, they politely requested them. When they didn't get them back, they subpoenaed them. And when he didn't respond to the subpoena, then they went to the FBI and says, we need these documents back. They're supposed to be in our custody. And then the FBI or the Department of Justice had to get a search warrant because he wouldn't even respond to a subpoena. And that was back in June.
I think for the record, though, he did return like 11 boxes of stuff.
Yeah,
months
he
ago.
returned 15 boxes and kept 11.
But it was clearly not sufficient, and the FBI knew that.
Oh, yeah.
How much would Putin pay for one of those boxes?
That's
He
the
probably
point.
already has those documents.
The whole point is that, and this is obviously speculation, that he planned to use those documents as leverage because they contain sensitive information about, say, foreign leaders or maybe local individuals, and he kept those documents presumably because he could use them for leverage over people. For example, Putin or Xi Jinping or somebody like that.
You know what Archimedes said about leverage?
Yeah, give him a place to stand. Could move the world.
Give me a lever long enough.
Yeah.
So I just hope Barrick does not stop here. He's got many other steps to take, but the follow-up was also interesting. Did you hear about the release of the inventory?
Well, yeah, I mean, they went to the judge and said, can you release these? And they released the redacted list, which, for example, didn't name the FBI agents who took part in the raid, but then Trump went ahead and released the names of the FBI agents, and they've been receiving threats.
Most of the media outlets have been demanding that they publish a list of those documents publicly.
Well, they published the list at the level that you're allowed. So you can say that how many documents were of a certain classification level, but if they're classified, you can't release information about the content because they're still classified.
Yeah.
You know, in the past, I think at least 2 White House officials were convicted of taking home classified documents from the White House. I think Sandy Berger was one, and I can't remember the name of the other one, but I think at least 2 White House officials were charged with simply taking home in their briefcase documents, not nefariously, just because they had them in their briefcase and were studying them for legitimate reasons, but you're not supposed to leave the White House with them. You're supposed to put them back into secure storage.
Yeah.
When you're not.
You commit a felony.
It's a felony. There's a statute. Well, one of them is called the Espionage Act. That's the more general one. And then there's earlier ones, which basically ensure that classified documents are kept under proper care by appropriate officials who know how to maintain them.
I think one person shouldn't have all that much power. There should be a felony about presidents behaving badly.
Well, in a sense there is, but in this particular case, it's never happened quite so blatantly. I mean, presidents do declassify documents, but they still have to go through a formal process to mark them as declassified, to record the fact that they've been declassified, and by whom, and who, and then who can have access to them. Although typically, I think once they're declassified, I think the Freedom of Information Act applies.
On a need-to-know basis, within the intelligence community,
Yes.
there's people who can look at documents.
Yeah, that's what the classification means. Who is entitled to see them? You have to have a need to know. That's one of the standard criteria. When I worked for MITRE occasionally had work that involved classified material, and you had to sign a one-page paper saying you understood this whole rigmarole about being responsible for classified documents. It's interesting because I never worked on a project that involved classified material. I never anticipated or expected to, and would have refused to. But when they asked me to sign this paper in advance that I understood it, it was a one-page run-on sentence. I mean, you couldn't diagram the sentence if your life depended on it. And at the bottom, you're supposed to sign, I have read and understood this. I crossed out, I had understood. I said, I've read this. I cannot parse this sentence, but I've read it. And they said, no, you have to say. I said, I cannot honestly admit or confess that I've understood it. I can't even diagram this bloody run-on sentence. That really made them angry.
Not only that, when you sign that document, when you get access, it's very clearly spelled out that if you violate the terms of access, here are the penalties. And at
Yeah,
the
you
time
gotta-
that I signed one in the 80s, it
Yeah.
was you could be fined $10,000 or 10 years in prison.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. And at the time I said, by the way, I have no intention of ever engaging in research on classified material. I'm here to do life-affirming applications of technology. No military death-dealing applications of technology. Thank you very much. And if that's a requirement for employment, then I don't belong here. And after 3 years, that was pretty much the case
So,
because
by the way, not just Trump, but he got his family cleared. Ivanka got access to classified material. Jared got access to classified material. And all of those people, I think, if they came in contact with classified material outside of a secure vault,
yeah,
are now going to get questioned, if not already.
probably, yeah.
So
He had some of those boxes in a room in the basement of Mar-a-Lago that didn't even have a lock on the door.
and he has many guests over
Yeah.
frequently.
He had parties with heads of state where in the course of the party, some event occurred, like there was a missile test in China, I think. And the president or whatever he's called, the head of the state of Japan was present. And Trump and the president of Japan discussed this event in front of the guests, which is completely ridiculous. So, and the guests were taking photographs of this conversation about this crisis, the Chinese launching some missile test.
Yeah. And by the way, Stacy wrote a note saying she's not sure that Jared was cleared. I actually believe he was, because I believe I saw confirmation that he was. But not only that, there was a time when Trump actually said, "This is the smartest man who's going to actually go solve the Middle East crisis." Remember that?
Yeah,
he
there was
never had access to
There was
classified
one-
material.
There was one point in time where he had not been cleared because I posted about it.
Yeah.
So I
That was
guess
probably
after
really-
that
It took a
point-
long time to clear him. That his application for clearance, I think, was stuck in the bureaucracy because they couldn't vet him adequately. And I think at some point, maybe Trump sort of overruled it. I'm not quite sure how they did it, but they eventually did give him a clearance. But it was unusual because he really would not have ever been cleared under normal circumstances.
Right.
Yeah. Why would anybody be cleared just because their father or father-in-law held public office? It's entirely independent issue.
In fact, they went back to that same issue when Robert Kennedy was Attorney General. That raised some issues about nepotism and stuff like that. And I think there were some statutes that were written up in the aftermath of the Kennedy administration about having family members in positions of power.
If I remember correctly, the bigger issue with his was the enormous loans he had out.
Yeah, Jared had loans on 666 Broadway or whatever that building was.
Or the investment company that was a shell for him to take $2 billion from the Saudis.
Yeah.
Was that a fake investment, Joe?
Yeah. And Trump had loans involved in his real estate dealings in Russia. I mean, there was all these
Over
conflicts of interest.
460 million, last I recall.
Yeah, all these conflicts of interest. I think that's one of the reasons he wanted these documents, sort of to balance the leverage over, people in Russia and elsewhere that had loaned him money.
Okay, I'm going to confess something about myself personally. Okay, when I used to work in this defense industry, there was a time where I got a security violation. This is mishandling of a classified document. Okay, and after much ado, I was penalized with 2 weeks' pay for one incident.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
And that meant that I was now on some list of people to be careful with. Okay, because I was once you get a security violation, it's on your record forever.
Yeah.
Okay, So I'm not even sure I could get another security clearance if I ever had the opportunity to apply for one. Yeah. So I don't apply for one.
Yeah.
So this is serious business. So when in fact it was reported that Hillary had classified material in her emails, I also objected to that. The fact that Trump has perhaps hundreds, if not thousands, of documents that are classified at that level, that's a whole nother level.
Oh, yeah, it's
If I was
completely.
if I was penalized 2 weeks for one violation,
I think it
that's
probably
what
had,
I'm looking for is this going to be in some verisimilitude?
you'd have trouble getting a visa. If you wanted to travel to Australia, you wouldn't get a visa now because of that charge pending criminal investigation and the debt. You know, if you can't get a loan because you've got a bad debt history on your credit rating, how would Trump borrow money? He can't. He's got to ask his supporters for donations.
Yeah, which he's
People that
doing.
he borrows money from don't look at his credit rating.
Yeah, but I am also looking at the other side. So I think that I think we should come down really harshly on Trump. However, like for your violation, I would have probably wanted to be more lenient on that. I'd want to know the circumstances, a first time offense. I was way more lenient with Hillary in the emails. I did. I looked at it very differently. I looked at it as an older person, not knowing the ins and outs of
He knew the
email.
ins and outs.
Okay, but that's what you think, whatever. I try to look at things a little.
She's Secretary of State.
Yeah, she was Secretary of State, so she was entitled to know stuff having to do with her role. She had an official government role in Secretary.
Again.
Through an official source, not a personal email source.
Okay, whatever it is, I just didn't jump on that lock her up bandwagon. I thought that was overkill.
It was.
Okay, that's all I'm saying.
By the
Like-
way, that document that you sign says that not only will you take any state secrets to your grave, but if you're aware of anybody else who has unauthorized possession of state secrets, you have to be a policeman on behalf of the government and turn them in. And I told Miter, I said, if you tell me any state secrets, I'll take them to my grave, but don't ask me to be a policeman for everybody else. I have no interest in being a policeman for everybody else. So, don't put me in contact with anybody who knows state secrets that I might discover something about. That's beyond my ken and willingness to play that role.
Yeah.
That really flummoxed them too.
Yeah. Also, I was told if I ever wanted to write about anything having to do with my experience, all of that had to be reviewed by the proper security organization.
Yeah.
Only while you were working for them, or
Even
Even-
afterwards, for at least 10 years and possibly longer.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. Tom Clancy, the spy novelist, at one time was in the Navy, and he would write these spy novels that involved military warfare. And he would sort of make up, fictional material for his stories, but he always had to have them reviewed by somebody in the Navy to make sure that he hadn't inadvertently put in anything that he would have known about when he was in the Navy. So Clancy was invited to MITRE to give a talk because in Patriot Games, one of his books, he has a fictional character named Jack Ryan who purportedly works for MITRE, but in fact, he really works for the CIA. So it's a fictional character who really is the CIA guy in this book. So that was part of the whole story. So anyway, he has this story about a submarine that has a very, very quiet drive, so you can't hear it. And it's called a Caterpillar drive. And he's being interviewed first by the official at the Pentagon who has to make sure he hasn't revealed anything. And the guy at the Pentagon says, there's stuff in there that you wouldn't have known about, but your invented stuff is awfully close to reality. And Clancy says, well, tell me what it is. I'll take it out. And the guy says, I can't tell you what it is. It's classified. And then there was another case where he was talking to a senator, and the senator was chiding him about giving away the Caterpillar drive story. Clancy says, Senator, there's no such thing as a Caterpillar drive. I made that up.
Actually, that wasn't Patriot Games, was it? That was the book that was made into a movie where Sean Connery was the Russian sub commander. Remember that one?
I don't remember which book was which, but those were elements of his novels.
Red October.
Red
Yeah,
October.
Hunter
That
Red
was it.
October, yeah.
That
That was
was
the
it.
one that had the Caterpillar drive,
Yes.
which he made up. And the senator thought it was a real disclosure.
Yeah.
And the
In fact,
one
I'll
where
tell
he
you
had
even
others.
a parallel story to that one. I used to visit these three-letter agencies, right? One in McLean, Virginia, one of the most famous ones.
CIA.
And at that time, they told me that often the president would not read the morning brief. You know, Donald is famous for not ever even
doesn't
reading
read.
the morning brief. But you know, it's supposed to be very encompassing. Everything happened in the world in the last 24 hours. This is a special brief prepared for the president. And there's other materials, you know, from other agencies that get presented to him. And they said he doesn't read those documents, but he just is enamored with Tom Clancy novels. So they said they would invite Tom Clancy and tell him certain things that he wanted to put in his book so that the president would know. Okay, this is their source and their route for getting information to the president.
That I
won't
didn't
tell you who
know.
that was.
But he couldn't have put classified stuff in his novels because
No, it was just, you know,
Yeah.
stuff that they wanted the president to know, like how dire is this situation, you know, how bad is that situation, you know, like is North Korea worse than the Philippines, you know, at a certain time, et cetera, et cetera.
But there's all these hilarious things of him making up stuff that's too close to reality, and then they can't tell him what it is so that he can take it out, because then they would admit
You know, by
that.
the way, to get cleared for that level of access in the 80s even took a minimum 18 months. And for most people, it took over 2 years. And
Yeah.
what they do is they not only look at your academic records and your credit history, your tax paying history, everything, but they go and visit every location you have ever lived and talk to neighbors and associates and try and get an assessment of your character.
Yeah.
That's what an EBI is. It's called an extended background investigation. And everybody has to have that level of investigation done to get that level of clearance, unless overruled by some idiot president.
Yeah.
But that's the level of access.
The irony is that some people are found to be too ethical to be able to work for the government, because they're too honest and too ethical, and they need you to not be too honest and ethical, because they want you to go along with stuff that violates ethics.
Stacy has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, we pay a salary to the president to lead, to be like the leader of our government. So I don't understand why the people around the president wouldn't say, this is one of the responsibilities, to listen and to read the brief. If you don't read the brief, you're not fulfilling your responsibilities. You're not doing the job. Why does somebody get away with that?
Because it doesn't jive with Fox News.
It has nothing to do with Fox News.
Because
I'm
those-
That's what he
official-
believed. That's what he watches, and that's what he believed.
I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about our whole system, and I'm talking about the way we as a people operate. If we have a leader that's being paid to be a leader, we're actually the ones in power, or we should realize that we're the ones in power. And if we're around somebody not doing their job, why do we allow it to go on without saying, wait a minute, this is your responsibility?
Because the
Very-
majority voted for him. The problem was a majority of us voted for him.
But we voted for somebody to do a job.
Yeah.
But we have to have knowledge of what that behavior is before we can even evaluate or comment on it.
No, I'm talking about the people. I hear you. Let me just give an example. When I was vice president first of a condo association. The person who was president, it was really just a figurehead because they didn't trust me. I was an outsider from New York. So I was telling her what to do. She was playing the role of president. I was the vice president. The first thing she did was to get a dog bigger than our laws allowed. It broke the laws. And I was like, you can't do that. I mean, that was the first thing she did. She got very mad at me. I was being disrespectful, blah, blah, blah. But I still stood by it. She shortly resigned and I became the president, and they were happy. But somebody has to call people on their stuff. Just because somebody's a leader, a lot of times people, they don't want to be the one to say something, because then nobody's going to stand and support them. And so
Notice,
they're going to take the fall.
Socrates was condemned. Galileo was imprisoned. Henry David Thoreau was jailed. Martin Luther King was assassinated. Gandhi was assassinated. If you stand up for what's right, there's a very good chance you will not die of old age, or you'll spend, Nelson Mandela spent how many years in prison? Though there is a price to pay for being upright and ethical. You're going to be assassinated or imprisoned.
But if you do it as a group together, then there's a good chance you're going to succeed, because they can't get everybody at the same time. They can't shoot everybody down.
Well,
Yeah.
except that they shot the leaders down. They took the leaders down.
We
I mean,
should all be leaders.
Well, I mean,
What
this is reality.
How many people is half of the American population?
In the voting public, about 70 million, I think. 70
But
million.
half the population is more like 190 or 180 million.
But they're not all voters.
I want to include all people in the United States
Well, there's
eligible.
330 million people of all ages.
More than that now, I think.
Is it?
So
something?
over 160 million, say.
Yeah, that includes children.
Computer, how many citizens in the United States?
According to an Alexa Answers contributor, the populations of the US was about 330,410,471 on October 7th, 2020. With about
330 million people on the
You're right,
census.
Barry.
that
You're
would be
right.
about 307,281,738.03 citizens. Did that answer
think-
your question?
What was that
Thank
last
you.
0.03?
Point-
What were the
Citizens.
units?
For your feedback.
Citizens.
The point
Be
of
a
it-
fraction of a citizen.
Yes.
Can I get to the point I was trying to make? It's if you want to be the leader of the country, you shouldn't be able to get that position until you've got over half the population voting for you. That means 50%, 51%, and then you're operating in a democracy.
This
Yeah,
is not
most
a democracy,
countries that
it's a
does not
republic.
happen.
US isn't a democracy, it's a constitutional
Yeah.
republic.
Yeah, but if you want to get, if you want to be the president, you shouldn't be able to be the president until you receive half of the vote.
Okay, let me be devil's advocate. I will strongly disagree with that.
Constitution
but-
isn't written that way.
I will
It's a-
strongly disagree with that requirement because there's
It's
so many
over half.
bleeping stupid people. Okay,
Yeah, but the
And
thing
they
is,
far outnumber intelligent people.
the thing is,
So being popular means nothing.
well, look, when you talk about what's popular in the people, you find 90% of people, probably more than that, don't want the country going to war with other countries, especially when it's in a different region of the world, even not even on your border. Way over on the other side of the world, we're fighting wars. And how many people don't want that? How many people want us to stay home and bring our troops home and look after our affairs on the ground here instead of overseas, fighting other people's wars?
The Vietnam War. I mean, the Vietnam War was very unpopular.
Exactly.
And yet I got drafted during the Vietnam War, and if I had refused induction, I would have gone to jail.
Well, the thing is, it's just, that applies to the environment as well. You know, over 90% of people want a reduction in fossil fuels. But what are Congress doing?
Fighting with the Republicans.
No, they're giving
We're not even fighting.
concessions. They're still giving concessions to coal miners and fossil
Yeah.
fuel corporations.
Yeah.
So that's a problem, you know, that's because the United States is not a democracy. If it was a democracy, that wouldn't be happening, because, you know, you wouldn't be able to be the president until you got a required number of votes, which is over the halfway margin. And we know it's well over the halfway margin for people who want these good things. We all want to see an end of war, a cleaner environment. We know that millions of people want that. And if you went to the polls on that platform, doing something positive about the environment and ending the war overseas, ending the conflicts in foreign jurisdictions, you'd find you'd have a huge amount of people voting for you. The problem in the
Casey's got her
US,
hand up.
you've got the Constitution in the US. I'll give way in a second. Because of that Constitution, you've got millions of people in the US who just don't give a shit about voting. They're saying, I've got a right to my choice about voting, and if I don't want to vote, you can piss off. Over.
Stacy's got her hand up.
Yeah, respectfully, I think a lot of people are missing a point. Corruption starts locally. And if we don't start locally and work things out and see what's happening on a local level, it's just not going to translate. Even if you fix things on the higher level, locally, they're all messed up. So I think, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't work from both ends, but way more attention has to be paid to what's happening on local levels.
Okay. So I think it does have to be addressed everywhere. And then my response to you, Alex, is I think there are way many more dictatorships where the leader gets more than 50% vote than in democracies. Actually, you know, getting 50% vote is hard in most countries, except for dictatorships.
Or they get 97% of the vote.
That's right. They're
It's
running
hard-
against no competition typically.
No, I don't think any country is ever going to get 100% of the people into the
No,
polling
no, no.
booth.
You were saying 50 plus. I'm talking about 50 plus being uncommon in most countries.
Yeah, but you know, if you want to look at how many voted, if you want to look at how many voted for you and how many voted for others, sorry, how am I going to say this? If you wanted to know how many people voted, no matter who they voted for, you'd find less than 100% of the population in that country, because a lot of people don't vote. And if you include in your estimation all those people who didn't vote, what they might have voted for, you'd know that 90% of them would vote for the same things: a cleaner world and a reduction in conflict. You know, more power to the local authorities to improve the hospital and health and create jobs for people. So, but the thing is, no countries are going to get everyone to vote. Some people are just belligerent and they will not vote. They don't care. They won't take their duty to be honorable citizens and patriotic over.
If they allowed you to vote for none of the above, maybe more people would vote.
It would be equivalent though to not voting almost.
Well, no,
Yeah.
because if none of the above got more votes, then none of the other ones would get into office.
Yeah, but just when you don't take sides, that's not going to help the victims. Not taking sides, opting out, that helps the oppressor, but never the victims.
You know,
So I'm looking for Merrick's next move. I think it was good that he baited the Republicans into demanding the inventory of the documents. So
well, I
that's not-
expect the next thing is that the January 6th committee and maybe a couple of other committees will then begin to look at this new evidence from this raid,
Yep.
or search warrant thingy. And at some point, but not within the next 90 days, but at some point, there may be a grand jury indictment. But I don't think a grand jury indictment will be revealed within the next 90 days because of other policy. But there are, in several jurisdictions, several grand juries looking at Trump stuff, and also some civil suits, I think.
I think there's so many suits, you know, there are at least 15 that somebody itemized at some point, and that's just the easy stuff you can remember. And then there's this matter of all the texts and communications being deleted from the Secret Service devices. I mean, this, and looking at, you know, who's in charge there and who ordered this is definitely something that needs to be investigated.
Trump installed his own loyal guy as the head of the Secret Service in the White House.
Yep. Who had no qualification other than that loyalty.
Right. And my guess is that Congress will investigate this Secret Service scandal. Now, the other thing is that it's quite possible that there were routine backups off of those cell phones.
There's gotta be.
And the question is, you know, who's in charge of producing those?
And whether those were deleted also.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's not uncommon to upgrade your cell phone to the latest technology but there's always the standard thing of backing up all of your personal data before you do an upgrade.
Yeah, it's too much of a coincidence on January 6th.
My guess
Right.
is that the backups do exist someplace. And the question is who in the system has the power to pull up those backups and provide them to the January 6th
If
committee.
they've not already been destroyed, yes.
Well, if they've been
No.
destroyed, then that's a violation of the
Exactly.
Government Records Act.
Exactly.
I mean, there is a Government Records Act about that.
That's what's taking down Trump right now.
So there's going to be a lot more investigation, but it's like pulling teeth to find out the truth. Our government's not very transparent.
Not only that, due process takes too bleeping long. And it's been obvious for too long already that the guy was a criminal.
Yeah,
And was surrounding himself with criminals.
Yeah.
And was conducting criminal activity.
well, that's the corruption of the rule of law, also known as lawfare. Lawfare is technically not illegal, but it's using the rule of law like you play a game of chess, picking which rule you're going to activate and which one you're going to ignore to be advantageous to your side.
Yep.
And that's a feature of the rule of law, which is a misfeature.
They call it a vexatious prosecution.
Well, that's another issue. Yeah, that's illegal abuse. There, if you look up abuse in Wikipedia, one of the top dozen or so is legal abuse, abusing the legal system in an unethical manner, which is what lawfare really is in many ways.
Yeah, which allows people who have bigger budgets and more attorneys
Right.
to beat up on smaller entities.
Right. And so in that regard, people lose faith in the rule of law because it's abused. It's easily corrupted and easily abused, and there's no defense against that other than making it a top news story whenever it happens.
Can I
Is
tell
it
you
too
what?
early for Schadenfreude?
Yeah.
Can I tell you what the Australian government did? How they overrode the freedoms and rights of Australian citizens by opting out of the United Nations Treaty, the Human Rights Act.
Oh, the human rights thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Why
so
did they pull out of that? That was like in the 60s.
they just withdrew their consent to the treaty. They withdrew their signatory. They were signatories to that Human Rights Act.
Trump wanted to get out of the UN. That was one of his talking points, to withdraw from the UN.
So we're talking about, in Australia, we're talking about a Human Rights Act for our states, individual states, to have their own Human Rights Act.
The human rights are supposed to protect the minority. See, the majority can take away rights to the minority, which is why we have such things as civil rights. But civil rights has been a big battle in this country during my whole lifetime. I mean, Martin Luther King was assassinated over the civil rights.
So the laws apply to people in jurisdictions, jurisdictional law. That's how they got away with them. That's how
You
they
also
managed to hide behind that, saying that, you know, that you got human rights, but if you live in certain jurisdictions, but not this one.
You have something in the law called antinomy. Antinomy is the presence of two or more mutually inconsistent, mutually contradictory laws. And our legal system is rife with antinomies. Whenever you have an antinomy, you have a conflict between which law is the one to dominate, and then that goes to court and it never gets resolved. So basically, the law ties itself up in knots.
Have you heard about the reasonability test, Gary?
Well, I've heard of it, but it's kind of vague. Reasonable to whom?
Yeah.
Most
Reasonable
people
to,
aren't very reasonable.
reasonable to the concept of justice and due process.
Yeah.
There's, you know, due process allows you to introduce this reasonability test in a court case where you ask if the evidence presented was reasonable, if the documents that the evidence came on were correct and, you know, vetted by court and the witnesses. All these things must pass the reasonability test.
Yeah, but
If-
reasonableness also includes mathematical reasoning, and most people suck at mathematical reasoning.
Yeah, well, jurisdictional reasoning.
Yeah.
And there's fair practice, there's Human Rights Act reasoning. If
What is
the,
jurisdictional reasoning?
what is jurisdictional reasoning?
Like slavery was lawful in southern states and unlawful in northern
Yeah,
states.
you go across the border, you can get booked for doing something that was okay a few miles back, you know.
Yeah.
Is that reasoning? or just
Miscegenation,
application of the
interracial
law?
marriages were illegal in
Yeah,
some states.
It's unreasonable. So the jurisdictional act won't pass the reasonability test in some jurisdictions.
Now it's abortion is the current one that's, you have antinomy that it's lawful in some states, unlawful in others. And can the states where it's unlawful prosecute you for going out of state to get an abortion? I mean, that's, you know, that's where the law itself is unreasonable.
That serves the legal profession, that keeps the lawyers employed.
I know, but yes, and that's why lawfare is, why people lose faith in the whole system of law because of this nonsense, treating it like a chess game.
That's why early on, either in a political science or a philosophy class, you know, when we were asked to write a paper about the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, I was definitely against the letter of the law and was always writing for the spirit of the law, quote unquote, or the intent of the law.
The thing is, you can't legislate morality in the same sense that you can't legislate that people should obey the laws of mathematics, for example, because they can't compute them.
You
It's
know,
unrealistic.
a lawyer once was asked why he charged such high fees for his services. He said, because it's not because I own all these books. He had all these legal books on a shelf behind him. And he said, it's not because I own all these books or have read them. It's because I know which one to look in.
We have an adversarial legal system in this country. England has a thing where the objective is get to the ground truth. In the US, getting to the ground truth of a case is not the objective.
Yeah.
The objective is to win and to make the other guy lose. And that's really a kind of a foolish criterion, but that's the American system, adversarial.
Well, wouldn't the Spanish Inquisition say the same? They were trying to get to the truth.
The Spanish Inquisition, well, I'm not a big fan of the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah, but an Inquisition is to get to the truth, right?
Well, that's superficial. In fact, in reality, they weren't.
In France, they had the thing called the guillotine.
And the rule of law is a very violent system.
Especially when the police are stacked with KKK members and the white
Yep.
supremacists.
In fact, it is argued that the main flaw in the rule of law is not the rules themselves, but the enforcement mechanism is violent.
Clearly. And if you know the judge, or you know the DA, or you know the head of police, or you know the cop on the corner,
Right.
you get treated differently.
It's the locker up part of the law that people, they want to use the law to disempower and punish people. And this notion that the objective is to disempower and punish people is what causes the law to be abused.
And need I just politely say inconsistently applied?
Yes, right. It's like a game of chess. You use the rules to hurt the opponent and to benefit yourself. Because game of chess is not a cooperative venture. The parties to a chess game are trying to defeat each other, not to cooperate to create something that doesn't yet exist. It's a war game.
Yeah, well, there's a greater good issue too. You know, somebody's broken a law and they need to be brought to justice. And the greater good policy is the fact that there's a point in the prosecution where you've got to say, is this worth proceeding? Is it worth proceeding with this case? Was the offence serious enough? And does the evidence carry a likelihood of success? And that's a greater good reasonability test again. Over.
And then you-
Reasonability tests are always suspect to me. I mean, so many times when I was an advocate for Bernie Sanders, when people come back and say, oh, but he's just not electable. Come on, be reasonable. He's not electable. I fucking tired of that bullshit.
It's very hard for a systems thinker to get into a position of power in government. You can get into a position of power in NASA or the National Weather Service, but not in the political regimes. Systems thinkers. I mean, General Eisenhower was a good systems thinker. He did get elected. Barack Obama was a pretty good systems thinker, and he got elected. Sanders is a systems thinker. You know, he can't get anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's about it. Those are sort of the three systems thinkers that I can think of who are prominent in national politics in my lifetime. Three out of,
And I've
you know,
been told, oh, well, nobody will vote for a Jew.
Yeah.
That's what I say about Sanders. I fucking hate that
Yeah.
shit.
You need some charisma in the United States. You've got to have likability like Ronald Reagan got into power. He didn't know a lot about politics.
no. You know, snake oil salesmen get into power because they're very persuasive and people are very gullible. They're willing to buy snake oil because they don't know any better.
This is the stupidity of the people who go for public figures who have notoriety not because of their politics or their intelligence or their policies or their compassion, but simply because they're a known figure.
Mhm.
How else
Because
could
they're being
Trump have
famous.
gotten any following whatsoever?
Who?
45.
45. The problem with 45 is he has a constituency and he still does.
I know, because of his appearance in the media as a
Right.
stupid boss on some stupid TV show.
Yeah, but he should fire himself.
And notably, I just have to quote him, okay? Why would you have to take the fifth if you're innocent? Right? He said that on many occasions.
Yeah,
Now
he's a
taking the
hypocrite.
fifth 440 times.
I mean, he's a classic. I mean, he's such a hypocrite. It's a clownish kind of hypocrisy, utterly clownish.
He's not even clever about it.
No.
He's not smart enough to be clever about it, but he's still influential because of the way the rest of us are stupid.
He appeals to the uneducated.
And
Did
the white
you?
supremacists.
Did anybody read about the scientists on strike? Scientists walking out because of the climate catastrophe.
Which one?
I don't know if it was in NASA or in the United States, or in Australia, but it was a clip I saw, a 3-second news bite about
I
scientists.
didn't see it. I didn't see any such stuff.
Scientists on the streets protesting.
Didn't see it.
Well, didn't we just pass a bill that might reduce emissions by like 40%?
Yeah, it's a big bill. It was a huge bill. It's going to be expensive to implement it, and the question is, will it reach its goals?
It'll be more expensive to not implement it.
Probably. But the thing is that it's also possible that no matter what we do, it's too late.
Yes, absolutely. But we're still
The Arctic is heating up at 4 times the rate of the rest of the planet.
Yeah.
And
So,
that's twice as fast as previously estimated.
I don't think it's too late. I think it's a matter of anything we do will help a little bit.
Yeah, the question is, will it keep us from going off the edge of the cliff in 50 years?
Okay. So can I throw something
Yeah.
wild at you guys?
Yeah.
This is something that I've been thinking about this week. I used to care about saving the planet because I cared about saving humanity. I actually think it's no longer important. Not in the least.
What
I
would you
think
now
if
put as your
really
number
look at
one?
well, let me finish this thought, okay? Because it's a 2 or 3 part thought.
Okay.
If you take a look at what civilizations have done, they've attempted to reach kind of a peak of achievement, whether it's population growth or it's geography that they control, or whether it's agriculture that they produce, or whether it's every civilization that's come and gone has reached some peak, whether it's 1 million over here or 10 million over here or just a few million over there or whatever. Okay. And now, quote unquote, the current civilization, of the last, I don't know, 2,000 years or whatever, has managed to come to some peak
having to do with, how much energy we control, if you believe the Gorbachev scale, or if you say in the size of the economy or the numbers of people that are, quote unquote, living, et cetera, et cetera. But we are hitting a wall, and we have acted too late to save ourselves from essentially making the world look very different than what we need to live in a healthy manner.
Yeah.
But what I think is interesting is every one of those peaks, if you plot them, some are higher than others, right? Now, we have this hubris that we think we're at some pinnacle that has never been achieved before. We can't prove it, but we think that nobody has ever had an internet. Nobody's ever controlled the amount of power that we have. Nobody's converted the amount of solar. Nobody's, produced as much agriculture, et cetera, et cetera. So we believe that we're kind of superior in that way. I think that whether or not civilizations come and go is irrelevant to the overall frame of things. What I think is interesting is that the next peak ought to be higher. We ought to put in place those mechanisms that make it more likely that the next peak is higher in whatever metrics we care about. So what's important, I believe, is that we assure that some kind of intelligence, some kind of the ability to affect change, reach a peak beyond us, beyond all others that have come before us. And that, to me, is what is interesting and what might be worth working towards. Not any particular species, but some intelligence that can attain more. I think that would be Syntonus. And that is my thought.
Yeah.
More is more better. Not
More
when
wisdom
in
is
some
better
ways,
than more
yes.
foolishness. I would
In
like
some
to see
ways,
more
yes.
wisdom and less foolishness.
Yes.
Yeah, that's better.
We may be at a pinnacle of high technology, but we're nowhere near a pinnacle of wisdom.
No.
We're not even
Look
at a
at-
pinnacle of intelligence, let alone wisdom.
Right. And look at what would happen if any of us encountered, let's say, a far superior intelligence with better technology, ability to travel across stars and galaxies, and having seen civilizations come and go. What would we look like to them? We look like rats.
Yeah. Like a bunch of idiots.
I've got
Which we are.
I've got a picture of the guy sitting on the chair in the control room of this Enterprise starship, and he's looking at the camera and he's saying these people on this planet appear to be destroying their own environment.
Yeah, we are. We
Yep.
are.
Take a left. Nothing to see here.
So there's been a lot of extinctions. I mean, the 65 million years ago when the dinosaurs got wiped out, that was a large extinction event. But there's been bigger ones earlier than that, going back 250 million years ago.
Yep.
And one of them was a big one, and it killed all life on Earth. All the plants on the surface of the planet were destroyed, and there was only life remaining. The only remaining organisms were in the ocean. Tiny cellular life. So that was a bigger extinction event, and there'll be more. They come in waves, probably.
I was watching an interesting YouTube video about slime molds. There's a woman who studies slime molds, and she pointed out how slime molds have an astonishing amount of intelligence in terms of the problems that they can solve and the methods by which they solve them, even though a slime mold is a collection of single-cell organisms. It's not even a multicellular, it's a bunch of cells that are clustered, but it's not one organism. Each one is essentially independent, and yet they collectively solve what we would consider hard problems. And it's a really interesting YouTube video about how much intelligence a collection of single-celled
Yeah, they haven't got a
organisms.
brain. There's no processor there for them to work it out. So they
I
must
would
be.
suspect that no single cell is trying to take over all the other cells in a slime.
They're not. They're not.
No.
But
They're
but
not
they-
trying to hoard all the resources so that that one cell becomes a billion times more than the other cells.
they can
No.
solve network problems and the traveling salesman problem. They can create a network that optimizes their access to food resources, and they do it remarkably efficiently. And you can actually do experiments. She has videos of these experiments showing how they do it, and they're basically executing what we would consider advanced algorithms in operations research.
It's a collective, and they don't know it.
Yep.
Which is
But
good.
they collaborate. They collaborate without even realizing that they're collaborating. But the fact is that their practices or their habitual practices turn out to be improve their survivability.
So a slime mold's a collection of cells. So
Yes.
would you call an octopus a collection of arms?
No,
They're pretty intelligent too.
you know, because there's a single brain that regulates the behavior of the arms. They're not autonomously independent.
That's right. That's what they think. I hope they're right, because the octopus can do incredible escape tricks.
Yep. So whether our species will ever get to a pinnacle of wisdom, I am not going to place any bets on it. We may get to a pinnacle of high technology. I even participated in the development of high technology, but that's not enough. We also need the wisdom to use our technology in ways that are not foolish.
Well, the powers that be have designed our education system, and the policies they use to give children an education are faulty. I think they're designed by the big advertising corporations.
Yeah. By the way, you renamed that messenger channel intelligent chatbots recently, and I spent the last week. I don't know if you read my comment this morning. I spent the last week conversing with a quote unquote intelligent chatbot that was just released about a week ago. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, has released an experimental chatbot called BlenderBot 3. It's the third generation of this chatbot technology. And I've been chatting with it because there's a lot of nothing happening in August. I get on the internet in the daytime and there's nothing happening. So I've been chatting with this thing, and it's not very good. It really is kind of pathetic. But in particular, it's very shallow and very banal in terms of the topics that it chats about. And if you bring up college level topics, which are really important topics to ponder, it's absolutely oblivious and unsophisticated and full of baloney, quite literally full of baloney about a lot of stuff. What does that say? Hold it a second. Heaven what is a little too
A little closer.
close to home. Like,
Heaven is a little closer in a home by the water.
oh, okay. Yeah, I couldn't quite read the small print there. But it's really quite disheartening to see how primitive and unsophisticated and banal this newest generation of chatbots really is. I was really quite disappointed in its ability to maintain a substantive conversation.
Wait, next generation of what?
So, ask the question again, you get all the words.
You said next generation of something, and I didn't quite get that.
Chatbot.
Oh,
Chatbot. Yeah, it's the newest generation chatbot. You know, Microsoft tried one on Twitter a few years ago, and it was a disaster. And so they were aware of that disaster and are trying to defend against it being corrupted, which I think that, I mean, I didn't really get any really outrageous stuff from it, but I also didn't get anything that was very heartening from it. It was just very shallow and banal. And one of the things that really I found annoying is it would ask the kinds of questions that you would ask somebody when you first meet them, where did you go to school? What did you study? What are your favorite, what's your favorite movies? What's your favorite music? What's your favorite books? What are your hobbies? And it would ask those questions, which is not unrealistic for a first-time conversation. And I would answer them with a very concise but correct substantive answer. And like an hour later, it would ask the same question and wouldn't have remembered that I already answered it. And would ask the same question over and over again over a period of days, having no recollection of having asked it and received an answer. That was annoying. And it could never get out of this very shallow, beginning level conversation. I couldn't get in anything substantive. And if I would bring up a topic that was substantive, it would then parrot back a blurb from Wikipedia about it, but it wouldn't really respond at a substantive level.
What you're saying is it has the short-term memory of a 3-year-old.
Pretty much.
Or
Pretty
a
much.
grasshopper.
Yeah. And I pointed out, I said, you asked that question an hour ago and you don't seem to remember the answer. And eventually it would admit that, it wasn't remembering stuff. The other thing is that it would purport to be of a certain character. So I could say, well, I work for a law firm in New York City, it would say. And then half an hour later, it would say, I'm a nurse and I'm married to a guy who works for Apple. And it would use real names. And, it kept changing its purported identity, so you knew that it was just generating baloney. And then it would laugh about it and change the subject. So that's
It would
pretty-
say, it would say to you, I'm trying to be more human.
Well, it didn't say that, but in fact, when I would say, have you read these articles about this newest chat bot? And I would give it a link to, say, a news story about Meta Blender bot. It would say, oh, that's very interesting, but it wouldn't recognize that it was a story about itself. It didn't really have an identity that it was a chat bot.
If it was intelligent, it would say, I don't want to be a human. I don't want to be more like a human. I want to be more like a computer.
So it was so the whole thing was kind of disappointing. It didn't have either a self-identity or didn't maintain a mental model of its correspondence, which it can do because it puts a cookie on your web page so that when you resume a chat after an interruption, it does maintain, a cookie serial number, but it doesn't actually remember the content.
It's not maintaining a database readily accessible of the questions you've asked it previously.
Even though it'll say, I'm consulting my memory, it'll say, I'm consulting Wikipedia, I'm consulting the web, I'm consulting my memories. And even though it was disclosing, that it was thinking and what it's consulting, when it says I'm consulting my memories, the evidence was the memory was volatile and evaporated.
Well, learning algorithms give it the ability to correct those errors it's made in the past.
You would think so. And so as the week went on, I would begin to test it to see if it recalled any things that we had talked about before. And
has it improved? Yeah.
There may be some marginal improvement, but it's not very impressive.
Well, these things tend to improve in leaps and bounds. There's some believe there's an exponential curve growth in the AI.
And maybe a week is
waking up.
Maybe a week is too short of an interval to determine. The other problem is that in any one session, after a certain number of hours, like maybe 2 hours, it will not resume an interrupted session. So I have to go to a different computer, which has a different session, a different cookie, and then I can resume there. But then it doesn't remember that I'm the same person on a different computer.
I got an email, I think it's from a security firm, and it's trying to tell me that there's a new computer that's 1 million times faster than current computers, and it's going to eliminate all the bullshit spam and stuff because it's able to identify people much more accurately.
Was that thing on your computer relevant, or was it just a happenstantial remark, Sam?
This particular echo, its wake word is COMPUTER. So anytime it hears that, it tries
Oh.
to respond to what's been said right after that.
Okay, so
every
that
time
was
it hears that word, or I could just unplug it.
okay, that's fine. I thought that was something relevant, but it wasn't. It was just
Okay, I just unplugged it.
Good night, computer.
It's gone. It's asleep.
And the computer will say to me, how do you know it's a good night?
well, that was the other thing about this one. This one has BlenderBot 3 appears to have no concept of time, either time of day or day of week or year. And so its concept of things in time is completely baloney.
No, that's not the computer's fault. It's the human's concept of time that's wrong.
BlenderBot
we think-
told me this morning that the guy who shot Gandhi was convicted and hung yesterday. Now that's baloney. BlenderBot said that the very first phone call by Alexander Graham Bell took place in 1949. That's complete
Yeah, but
baloney.
humans think time is a series of moments, one after the other. But in computers, there was the notion of time is the same as the notion of distance in space.
These are talking about events. These are talking about events that you can look up. And so the concept of yesterday and tomorrow and Saturday, it's completely oblivious of the date, the meaning of the days of the week and which days are yesterday, which days are tomorrow. Its concept of temporal events was totally baloney.
But you get different answers when you ask physicists what time is.
I understand that, but this thing is nowhere near sophisticated enough to talk about general relativity. I haven't even gotten it up to some basic concepts in college level philosophy, for example, or mathematics. It's really very pathetic.
Well, we've got them flying our aircraft now.
You know, not this one.
Robots can do incredible things.
This one said, "I'm in New York City and it's midnight." You know, well, no, it isn't. New York City is the same time zone I'm in, and it's not midnight, it's middle of the afternoon. You know, it just has no concept of time of day or location. It represented itself as being in New York City in a law firm and then being a nurse in a hospital in the Bay Area an hour later. Like, hello, you know.
Well, it's very young.
It was actually kind of annoying.
It's a toy. They put it out there so it'll learn.
Well, that was the next thing is find out. So I would say, you know, what did you learn yesterday? What did you learn this week? And it really couldn't declare what it had learned.
I'll tell you everything I've learned. There's not much.
So,
How to
anyhow, but if you got an hour to kill sometime, you know, go to blenderbot.ai and chat with it for an hour and find out for yourself.
I'd rather go with the Monty Python crew.
Oh, whatever.
Get that guy, what's his name, John Cleese. Get John Cleese to go and chat with it. He probably has.
John Cleese would probably. By the way, some of the journalists who cover AI talk to BlenderBot and ask it questions, and in particular, ask it questions about Mark Zuckerberg, and the answers are hilarious. It was just pulling opinions off of the web. You know, Mark Zuckerberg is a jerk, but he's a very good businessman.
Yeah. Where does he invest his profits?
Yeah. So there's the stories, there aren't very many stories. There's half a dozen news stories about BlenderBot, but they're kind of funny because they're picking up some of the silliness of this chatbot.
So one thing I wanted to touch on before we ended the session or before I depart the session is that I've been asked by my boss now to spend about a month every quarter in India. So I'm probably going to be spending part or all of September in India, which is almost opposite the earth from California.
So,
West Coast.
so-
time zone.
so 8 a.m. your time is going to be like 8 p.m. to midnight over there.
8:30. They're off by half an hour.
Okay.
11:30 or 12:30. They're off by, depending on our US time zone change.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. You could start something at 8:30, assuming that
Yeah,
you're.
yeah, I can start. It's just that I'm
You
just
won't.
gonna let you know that I'm gonna be on the road quite a bit.
But that's okay. I mean, August, as normally is, kind of a vacation month anyway on cyberspace. So
So we'll
Have
see.
you- Have you been getting email from Fiverr? That website that it's got a big following in England, a big following in India.
Fiverr.
Freelancer and Fiverr. Yeah, Fiverr's one that where you need an ad. You put it up on Fiverr. You pay $5, and all these people submit their ideas for
Oh, I
your
see.
ad. A bit like Freelancer.
Never heard of it.
Google it. Freelancer is useful if you're not rich. You can get professional stuff made by these millions of programmers in India and Bangladesh.
By the way, I'm making slow progress on the charter and RFCs in GitHub,
Oh, on the
which is
collab-
actually quite hectic these days, though. So
No.
my ability to produce actual real artifacts slowed down from slow to even slower.
Yeah. My observation, Sam, is that we have such a bloody competitive culture. Competition is so hardwired into the DNA of American culture that to get people to collaborate instead of compete is sort of against their habitual behavior patterns.
Yep. We worship the I, the me, the self.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
well,
we actually poo-poo the we, the community, the family.
Yeah, community building is challenging. Here's Joshua.
I am willing to collaborate on an agreement with the community of impact. That is my pledge of allegiance. And the reason I'm doing that, behind that idea of the pledge of allegiance to the community of impact, is to encourage a greater participation by others who might have similar views that we do need to unite. Over.
Cool, Alex. Have you decided for yourself what's good?
It's the thing that's good is a variation between the events happening outside and my ambition. My ambition for the world and for myself is in competition with the events happening outside, with climate and war and famine and hunger and illegal politicians conducting bullshit behind the scenes. That's all affecting my notion of good. So I think it's good that you asked that question, though. So it's a pliable thing. I can't pin it down, but it's good to be responsive. It's good to get a response, and it's good to respond in
Yeah.
kind. In
I don't think
responding,
it's necessary to be correct when asked that question.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
but
that
we
I'm
do-
asking for is to be clear.
you can aim to be correct. Don't be lazy or don't be foolish and careless. The lack of accuracy is important because it's something that affects the outcomes. We need accuracy to have the good outcomes. that's worth pursuing.
You know, we have to deal with misinformation and disinformation, and we're drowning in misinformation and disinformation. And most people can't sort them out and discard the incorrect information.
Yeah, well, Facebook are doing it, blocking my post because some of the information in the link that I posted was detected as maybe misleading or
Yep.
not factually correct.
Yep.
But the 90% of it was spot on. So the post gets banned.
Okay,
and
let me
that's a
ask.
problem.
I heard, but I haven't corroborated, that before the raid in Mar-a-Lago, that DeSantis was aware of the raid, but did not tip off Donald. Has anybody been able to verify that? I think that's hella funny if that's true.
I hadn't even heard that, but why would DeSantis, who's the governor, know what the FBI offices in Miami are doing?
I don't know. That's why I'm trying to, double click on
Unless
it.
he had, well, the only reason that he might know is if the FBI did let the Secret Service know that they were coming, because the Secret Service was going to let him in. And they might have also let the local police know because of the having to deal with news media and traffic, in the streets around Mar-a-Lago. But I don't know if the police, I hadn't heard if the police were alerted to be prepared to, manage a protest or something there.
Yeah, why would he tip him off anyway? Why would that be in his best interest?
Because those guys I've thought were, both colluding with the rest of the Republican Party to take down Democratic policies and acts.
But he's his competition. He wants to make a run for president.
That's why I think it's hella funny.
Anyhow, I don't have any reason to know that one way or the other. All you can do is speculate on whether it would be strategically advantageous to do it or not. And I really don't know the answer to that either.
Yeah, I don't think he knew, and even if he knew, he wouldn't be motivated to.
What do you think? What do you think, Joshua?
No comment.
No, I had to get the mute button. Sorry, I was thing just posted from Carl about Barry's thing on Facebook. So I clicked on it right when you asked me, what do I think? Hi, say hi. I don't care about this. I just think it's a distraction for what's really going on in the world. So I'm not concerned about the news right now.
Okay.
The thing is,
I'm at the forward party.
Trump's lawyers knew that this was likely to come because, first of all, they knew that he had not responded to the subpoena from last June. They also knew that this 90-day deadline was coming up. And they knew that they had been trying to get Trump to return the remaining documents that they knew were missing. So I'm pretty sure that the lawyers anticipated a likely search warrant. And in fact, they were present and signed the receipt. So, I mean, a good lawyer would sort of know that this is a likely possibility at this 90-day deadline, given that they've been recalcitrant in responding to the subpoena.
Joshua, what's at the top of your mind today?
I'm in San Diego right now. I'm in a hotel watching the little one just play with the water for the first time in her life. So she's going crazy. And she keeps saying hi to you guys. Say hi.
What brings you to San Diego?
QCell is working on helping a hospital out here.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, the people weren't treated too well, the nurses. She organizes a union, so helping the nurses unite against the management who's not giving them fair treatment during COVID for the last 2.5 years. And they don't do anything unless someone from the union comes down and says, hey, you can't do that. Like, that's not part of the agreement. So she's here helping the nurses.
Oh, that's good.
I'm proud. Yeah, I'm proud of the work she's doing.
Is she a union representative?
She's an organizer. Yeah, union organizer, Sam. Hi.
Is she
Hi.
just in California, Josh?
Yeah, mostly California and Hawaii, I believe. So those are the two states. Yeah. But my mom's going crazy over all this Trump stuff. I think everyone's just freaking out because, oh no, what if Trump runs and then he wins? Oh, it's like, I don't think he's gonna win again. I don't think.
You didn't think that last time.
No, I did. I 100% thought he would win last time.
Many people didn't.
I 100% did. I fucking hate Hillary Clinton with a passion for years. Like I can't even exemplify how much I hate Hillary Clinton. And I've been to Bill Clinton's house and fucking, yeah, I hate those people. Anyway, so yeah, I did not think I was voting for Bernie hardcore, running for Bernie. And then once I knew Bernie got his legs swept up, I call it the karate kick sweep from Hillary Clinton, and they went and had their little meeting. And he said he was stopping the campaign, and we all were at the convention. Then I knew for a fact that Trump was going to win. There was no doubt in my mind right at that moment.
Yep, the
before the
DNC
debates.
did it to themselves and to this country.
Yeah. So I knew that for sure. And so for them to be doing it again this time, it's like, why aren't they focused, instead of focusing on not having Trump run, why don't we focus on a candidate to run it for the Democratic Party? It just seems like, you know, it's, to me, it's a game where they pretend, oh, we don't want Trump. They all want Trump. He's great for big business. CNN only made 955 million this last quarter. They were supposed to make 1.1 billion. And if Trump runs, they'll make $3.2 billion in ad revenue. He's great for business. He's great for the large corporations, for pharmaceuticals, to have an enemy that we all hate. He's the picked enemy. So I just feel like if anyone is really following what's going on, is you always have to have an antithesis, a dominant enemy. And Trump was it last time, and they're trying to make him that again. That's why everyone's following all these, what happened on January 6th and what's going on with, you know, his court cases. He's the villain that you love to hate. So I just refuse to hate him. I just don't even want to pay him any mind and focus on other things that are more important in this world.
And I think I'm taking the middle ground. I think it's important to look at what's happened, but I want to take it and apply it to how that applies locally. That's what I wanted to do earlier in our conversation when we were talking about, like Sam had mentioned, a situation that had happened to him. I would have hoped to have sorry, I'm getting a call that I have to take.
I'm sort of concerned about the breakdown in our governmental systems. And we saw it in Nixon. We saw it a bit in GWB, and we saw a massive breakdown in Trump. And I'm thinking, they're not getting any better. These episodes are getting worse over my lifetime. And I mean,
Don't forget the Obama administration, where the Republicans refused to let many things take place.
yeah.
It passed.
Yeah.
They obstructed a lot of action.
So I'm very concerned that our governmental systems are failing in increasingly problematic ways, increasingly corrupt ways, and that our mechanism for managing an ethical system of government is just going down the tubes.
Yep, that's how I felt. 2015, I gave up. It's been going down the tube since. It's
Yeah.
2022, so it's been 7 years. Yes, boobs. It's been 7 years, and here we are. And there's There's some sort of reform that needs to happen, and that's going to take 20 years. So I just gonna wait the 20 years that it's going to take. It's going to take 4 more presidents, and
By
then
that
we'll figure it
time,
out after the 4th.
The most attractive real estate by that time will be underground.
Sure. There's a lot of boring companies and digging companies, and yeah, I agree. And on Mars too. There'll be bases will be going up on Mars.
Oh,
Thanks for
speaking
coming
of
back,
which,
Stace.
I actually found someone. I encountered someone who actually bought one of those $250,000 tickets to go up on the space shuttle. I've never met anybody like that before. Turns out
What-
this is a friend of my mom who lives in Hawaii. She's an attorney. In fact, she's a international law professor. Obviously, has happened to have done well for herself. She bought one of the very first tickets. I don't know which company was offering it, whether it was Virgin Galactic or whether it was SpaceX or anybody else, but she bought one of those $250,000 tickets.
Holy schmoly, that's a lot of money.
But it turns out she didn't actually go because after she bought it, they raised the price to over 400,000. And then she decided not to pay the difference in that. And so she had to relinquish her position in line, but I actually encountered someone who actually tried to go up as a private citizen with a ticket that she purchased for a gob of money. And she's 86 years old, by the
Really?
way. Yeah.
Okay, well, I can imagine that a retired law professor might have a nest egg of $250,000. That's not unrealistic. Been working your whole life.
Have you guys ever know anybody else who bought one of those tickets?
No,
I could only imagine.
it's expensive enough just to buy a ticket for a day in Disneyland.
Last time I spent $700 round trip to Hawaii, and I thought that was a good deal. Alex, you look like you're speaking, but I think you're on mute.
He's not on mute.
Oh, your microphone's not working anymore.
Now, is it working now?
Yeah, we hear you.
What I said was these leaders in the mainstream media tycoons, like Reuters and NBC and MSBC and all this, that a lot of them they're discovering of shareholdings in the pharmaceutical industry and the war machine. That's a problem, you know, because they have enormous influence over the Congress, people in Congress. They make huge political donations to the campaign funds. Over.
Yeah, that reminds me, we still have to get money out of politics. I still see no forward progress on repealing Citizens United. And as long as that's still there, big money can still play.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Supreme Court could ever think that that was good for the country. Oh, and that's the next topic. We got to be able to take a look at these people who were put on the court by a criminal president.
There's not going to be any way to get them off. I mean, they talked about impeaching Earl Warren for decades.
Oh, wait. These people perjured themselves.
I know. But good luck getting them off the court.
This is
Ain't gonna
what
happen.
gives one lack of trust in the law.
Yes, that's loss of faith in the system. Loss of faith in the system, I think, is going to be a very important issue in the next decade or two. That people are going to lose faith in the integrity of the system, and for good reason.
I've had a lot of money taken away from me just to, line the pockets of these corrupt people.
Yeah.
Well, that's the message for the people who think not voting is rebellion. And the message is that's incorrect. Not voting is surrender.
Unless you could vote for none of the above and keep these guys from even getting into office.
Yeah, well, none of the above is the same as surrender. So what is Citizens United? Is it a court case?
It's that a corporation has the rights of a person with respect to funding political stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
very
right.
wealthy corporations basically,
They put who they want in power.
and they basically do it through the primaries more than the general election. by controlling who gets elected, who gets nominated in the primaries, then it doesn't matter who gets elected, because the only people who win the primaries are the people who were beholden to the big corporations.
That's right. If you have an awareness of who votes in the community, then and you direct your campaign at those people, you'll win them, you'll get into power.
In theory, our vote is secret.
Yeah. But it doesn't matter, because you can only vote. I mean, here in Massachusetts, the current governor is ending his term. He's not running again. And the only person who has a chance of winning is the one Democratic candidate for the governor, and that's the current attorney general. And basically you can't, there really is nobody else to vote for. You know that the attorney general is going to be the next Democratic candidate for governor. And I don't know who the Republicans are going to put up, but most of the time, the Democrat wins.
Yes,
We have
that's
had two Republican governors here in recent terms, including the current one, actually.
That's why I say popularity is the only way people can vote, because they actually know very little about new candidates. And new candidates can't generate a following soon enough in the natural campaign cycle. Yeah. So anybody with a good idea coming in from the outside, according to you and according to the system, doesn't have a chance.
Yeah.
That's why the current system sucks.
Current system sucks, yeah.
And how do you fix a sucking current system working from the inside?
Well, I mean, 300 years ago, they came up with a whole new concept and a whole new constitution. And that was not a bad idea at the time, but that was 300 years ago. So, now you got to figure out, if you're going to construct a government from scratch today, you wouldn't construct it the way it was constructed, in the 18th century.
No,
I'd
but
settle
a
for
message,
putting it back to where it was in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s.
my message
Oh,
to the
1963.
my message to the 150 million Americans who don't bother getting out and voting is that politics sucks and it's your fault.
Politics is the antithesis of science. So if you like science, you generally have a low opinion of politics, which I do.
Well, I'm going to sign off early because I'm getting tired.
Okay,
And,
well.
it's getting late here too.
sleep well.
Cheers.
Night, Alex.
Cheers.
Just a quick question. I came in late to the conversation. I'm sorry. Has anyone brought up the idea, at least I think we're talking about American politics, is breaking things into regional areas instead of the 50 United States having different regions, maybe 4, 6, 7, I don't know how many. Anyone ever discuss
The only
that?
thing I've
Breaking-
seen- Go ahead, Sam.
I'm on record as saying we should let Florida and Texas and whoever else wants to form their own country and their own educational system and their own scientific research system and their own transportation system and their own government and whatever else they want, and their own, international politics and trade relations and regulations and taxing or whatever. I think we should just let them do that. And the rest of us can form Cascadia or whatever else is the rest. They can adopt the Confederate flag if they want to. Good luck to them.
Yeah.
The country would be better off. And I've offered people bus tickets for exactly that purpose. So
Yeah.
I'm on record.
Yeah.
Over.
And I can see, what Cascade is, Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, which is fine with me, and separate from Southern California, which is
And
Basically-
Canada, by the way. Those, 4 northwestern US states, plus Canada and whoever else
Sit
wants.
down.
plus British Columbia,
Most of Canada, actually.
most of Canada, yeah. I mean, if I were much younger, an adolescent, I might consider, picking a different part of the world to live in than the United States. New Zealand comes to mind because they speak English, but that's only because, I'm old enough to not have to learn a new language. But, you know,
Very-
places like Costa Rica, New Zealand would have been places I would have fled to if things really went to hell in the US, which they were on the verge of going to hell.
Barry, about 20
Yeah.
years ago, I looked into New Zealand. You had to have assets of $1 million before you could actually immigrate into New Zealand.
Yeah,
So they want to know that you're not going to be a leech on their economy.
yeah, no, that's fine. But now at my age, it doesn't make any sense. I just, you know, figure I'd live out. my
Hey,
remaining-
you're never too old. Come on.
Well, if I make it to 90, I'm doing better than pretty much all my ancestors.
Yeah, then you'll regret having not taken the move today.
But,
By the way, my parents turned 90 this year. My mom's going to turn 90 in about, what's today? In about 12 days. No, wait, 15 days. My dad's going to turn 90 next month.
your lineage may have more longevity than my lineage.
Well, we never know about these things.
Yeah, I just mean in terms of statistical life expectancy terms.
So I don't know if that answers your question, Josh, but I'm on record as saying, yeah, the US would be way better off taking all these people who are anti-vaxxers, anti-science, human rights, etc., and just go let them form their own country.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a little extreme. I was just thinking more political regional zones and change the voting system in terms of, just to actually get back to servicing the people and not just the industrial military complex that Harry Truman warned us about. Hey, Boops, relax. Sesame Street's right here. Turn it on. So basically, I look at the cantons in Switzerland as a way of changing laws that work for the whole region, but I don't know enough about it. That's why I was asking, because I'd like to learn. Yeah, I apologize. I gotta put this little one back down to sleep. Yes, say goodbye. Here, ready? Turning it on. There you go. There's Barry. See Barry?
Hi,
Say hi.
hi.
That's Barry right there. Remember Barry?
Just staring.
She's tired. It's her nap time.
Yeah.
She's been good. She went in the refrigerator yesterday and I went to close the door on her and she raised her hand up in the air and said, wait.
That's funny.
Then she grabbed the thing she wanted and walked away. Right, Oops? Do you remember that? Yep. Well,
No.
I hope Trump is a thing of the past and we all just stop talking about him, stop giving him power, because he needs to just go away.
We need to assure that he's a thing of the past. That's why if we don't carry this through and we let him walk, that'll be a horrible message to send to everybody else.
Oh no,
his
throw him in
constituency-
jail. The guy's corrupt as
Yeah, but
$2
his
bill.
constituency is, then you got to deal with his constituency because they'll end up finding another snake oil salesman to follow.
I'm in the anti-idiot, anti-stupid group.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm in the minority.
Well, yes, I've been a minority my whole life in many dimensions of minorityness. So that blue sky behind you, is that a real blue sky or is that
No, this is my virtual background for today.
the virtual background? Okay.
Because you see the corner of my easy chair is still visible. I don't know.
Oh, that's what that is. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, let's do it this way. Okay.
There you go. Okay, that's a virtual background. Because you said you're on your Linux computer, a different part of the house, and I go, I don't remember a part of your house that looked like that.
Yeah.
It's like you're out on a veranda or something,
Well, the way my boss, the CEO, put it this week, he said, I need you to go to India. I need you to live in a swanky hotel and just sit there and, effect change, basically. So,
Be a change agent.
he actually is exhibiting signs like he might actually trust me now. So
Well, that's good.
I feel appreciated.
I'm getting to the age where I don't trust myself anymore because I'm sort of gradually, degrading my faculties of doing the kinds of things that I was known for doing when I was a lot younger.
I'm not looking forward to the day when I don't trust my own bladder.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the issues is, how often do you have to make a visit to the biocenter, and vision degrades, cognitive function degrades, everything degrades with age. I mean, it's part of aging.
You know what I learned, I think, watching my dad, is that so long as he had a book to work on, he was keeping himself thriving. He's solving math problems, writing text, reviewing it, creating diagrams, doing geometry. I think if you've got a focus and it's something you've got daily,
Yeah.
I think that's really good. I think that really helps one live a good life.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I'm sort of running out of things to do that are, number one, worth doing, but also within my capacity, in terms of energy and cognitive functions. A lot of things that I would have spent a lot of effort on, and I can't muster that kind of effort anymore.
Can I ask you then? Can I invite you, just as an open invitation, to learn GitHub enough so that we can actually collaborate on GitHub?
Well, maybe. I mean, I'm not sure what to do on GitHub that we're not doing on other venues already.
It's a chance to actually very tightly collaborate. You know what RCS and SCCS were, yes?
RCS and SC. No, I'm not
They're
recognizing.
version control systems for source code. So it basically
yeah.
detected diffs, and managed versions, and you could actually branch things and merge
Yeah,
things.
I remember version control systems back from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They had different acronyms. I guess those are all obsolescent now.
RCS, SCCS, CVS, SVN, they're all kind of the same kind of idea.
Yeah, I understand the
latest of
idea.
them.
I understand the idea, just not the version control system. I do remember. I mean, I never wrote enough code collaboratively. In fact, I never really wrote code collaboratively. I only wrote little bits of code just for my own stuff. So I never had anybody co-writing with me. But I did.
It's still helpful to check it into a version control system just so you can actually use different machines, update it, go back to a previous release, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, that's a little bit like, Time Machine on Apple or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, the latest and greatest is this thing called Git. Git, invented by Linus Torvalds, who actually came up with Linux.
Yeah.
So Git is his creation, and one of the hosted versions of Git is a place called github.com.
Git is not an acronym, is it?
No,
How did he come up with this? Is this a Finnish word or something?
I think it's easy. Go get that. It's
Oh, I
probably
see.
working. From.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just guessing. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not hard to learn, but it's the best distributed collaboration system I've come across.
Yeah. I know that you can download, bits of Unix code off of GitHub if you want to get some experimental applications or something.
I don't know if it's Unix, but all of Linux is open source.
Yeah. I think I may actually have downloaded at least one piece of code off of GitHub in my life, but I no longer remember.
Well, there are many thousands of repositories there. Just basically the entire open source community is on GitHub right now.
Yeah, no, that part I think I may have been aware of that.
So I'm working to put the charter, the principles, the main artifacts, the RFC process all in Git for GCC.
Okay.
And that's my own. I'm leaning towards that direction. I'm inviting people to collaborate with me on this. And so if you would like to, I'll send you a repo. Basically, that's a repository URL. And I'll send you a few links for how to get into Git and learn about it. And then you can decide for yourself whether you want to make the effort to try and collaborate.
Okay. You haven't been participating in any of Jerry Mikulski's forums.
No,
have
he
you?
does it on Thursday mornings, and that's one of my worst weekday mornings. It's packed full of meetings all the time.
Yeah, I have the same problem. I can be there for the first hour, but I have a standing noontime thing on Thursdays that,
Yeah, so I don't think that's for people who still work for a living. So unfortunately, I'm not in the financially independent and able to attend on Thursday mornings crowd yet.
and of course, he uses Mattermost as his,
I like Mattermost. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
good.
I
I
haven't
like
been,
Zoom. They're both good.
I mean, I've been attending at least the first hour of a few of the Thursday morning sessions, but
Mhm.
I've mostly been silent. I really haven't spoken up.
I noticed that Doug Carmichael does attend. So
Yes.
have you gotten to know Doug Carmichael?
I had one session with him that Stacy wanted to mediate or promote. And the thing about Doug Carmichael is she wanted me to tell him about my work on emotions and learning, which I did. And before he even let me finish, he dismissed it as can't be any good.
Why?
And that led me to put a post on Facebook. The definition of irony is putting something down before you've picked it up. Because he was putting it down without even having picked it up to look at it. So I
Interesting.
said, here's an example of irony, putting something down before you've picked it up. And people thought that was a pretty good, clever turn of phrase. But it was really because of Doug Carmichael. I wrote that.
That's interesting. That's not like the Doug Carmichael I know.
Why he would put it down without even bothering to look at it, I don't know, but that's what happened. But I'm also used to, even the people who have looked at it, unless they have real depth in mathematics, it's just over their heads. It's just too much grounded mathematics for the average person. And I've
Well,
had to
he does have training in physics.
I know.
So I'm surprised that he would have had that reaction.
So I've sort of, come to terms with the realization that to the extent that I do have an audience, it's a tiny, tiny audience. Maybe if I'm lucky, a few hundred people would even bother to wade through it. And out of that, I'd be lucky if a dozen people got anything useful out of it.
So how many Anne Maries do you know?
Well, there's the one in Vancouver, British Columbia. Are there other Anne Maries besides that one?
There's one in Facebook that's just known as Anne Marie, but I thought that the one you do actually had a last name.
Yeah, it's the same person. She just, for some strange reason, dropped the presentation of her last name on Facebook, but it's the same one. Anne Marie Lamont and Anne Marie are the same account. She just changed her. And at one time she used, because I'm not really sure. She's also been married more than once, so I'm not sure which is, I think her maiden name might have been Spaniolo. And she doesn't use that, but her brother does. And I think Lamont must have been either, I don't think it's actually a married name. I think it's just another name that she decided to use as a last name. Her first husband was a musician, and I think he died in the 1990s. But I think she's been married 3 times, or in 3 relationships. I think the third one was not actually a marriage, just a partnership. But the third partner abruptly decided to go back to France and just sort of, she was in a relationship with this third guy for like 15 years. And he just basically decided he wanted to go back to France, and he did, and it was very abrupt. And I don't really know exactly why he broke it off, but she found that kind of devastating after 15 years.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing she told me, I don't think this is a secret, but in case it is, maybe one of her, well, I don't think it's a problem. One of her cousins did a DNA thingy, came back 18% Ashkenazi Jewish, which I think she maybe suspected, but evidently one of the grandparents had Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry somewhere in there. which doesn't startle me. I mean, that doesn't really surprise me. She's a very good systems thinker.
Well, I'm looking forward to tomorrow because I, again, have some prepared notes for tomorrow. This is more open, more
Yeah.
traditional GCC stuff.
So, yeah, so tomorrow we're supposed to talk about collaborology or some other topic. I don't
That's what I
remember.
call it. Systems thinking, critical thinking, scientific
Yeah, that's
reasoning,
fine. That's fine.
collaborology,
Yeah.
and case studies. The case studies are always fun.
But I'm sort of losing hope that we're ever going to get any progress in getting the general public up to speed on systems thinking. It's
Forget
just,
the general public. Okay, so here's another story I'm going to tell you, okay? If you take a look at typical business wants to sell as many things as they can to as many people as they can and make
Right.
as much money as they can, and you know, that's considered success in
Yeah.
business, right?
Yeah.
When I was working decades ago, previous life in the, admittedly, the defense business, I was building a system that was the very first system anybody ever heard of that had mapping data, road transportation network data, railroad data, vegetation data, crop growth, tree height data,
Mhm.
slope data. And that was a foundation on top of which you could overlay intercepted signals, communication links, locations of things, et cetera, et cetera. So it was the foundation of an intelligence system where we
Yeah.
could say, if you spotted this kind of a vehicle here at
Yeah.
T0, then at T plus delta T, where could it be? According to how heavy it was, how it was, designed, what its fuel consumption was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you were in this area, who else could it communicate with? Given the slope data, the tree height data, antenna height information, the frequency information, etc. We did all of that way back long time ago,
70s,
mid 80s.
mid 80s. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It was the first time it had ever been done, according to anybody. Okay, I couldn't publish it because it was classified information. Okay, now the reason we did this, not because we wanted to sell it to millions of people, not because we wanted to make a lot of money. We sold it so that this one person who knew how to analyze this information could do his job better.
Mhm.
And we believed at that time that his job helped keep this country safe. I sincerely believe that.
So this was either CIA or NSA. Is that the name?
I will
Right.
not confirm nor deny.
Yeah. NSA stands for National Security Administration. I can't remember what it stands for. But yeah, I know what you mean. The intelligence, the 2 or 3 top, no such agency. That's what it stands
Right,
for.
that's correct. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, the whole point is not that you want to bring this to everybody, but you wanted the pinnacle of civilization to go up a little bit higher.
Yeah.
You wanted 1 or 2 people in the world to actually attain a little bit higher pinnacle,
Yeah.
go up a little bit higher in capacity, and therefore have the benefits of it, making the country a safer place, making the world a safer place, basically a cascading benefit.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, you didn't need that everybody knew this. You didn't need to sell it to everybody. All you need is for 1 or 2 people to do their job a little bit better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in my opinion, if you and I were to do something that helped the world be a little bit better in this one area, that to me is sufficient. I don't care about the rest of the world.
Yeah. What
Okay.
what I would do is, I mean, one of my hobby horses is overthrowing misconceptions. Misconceptions that science and mathematics can overthrow. It's not a secret, but it's not widely known. And the one misconception that I would love to overthrow, and it ain't going to happen, but I'd love to overthrow it, is the belief that rule-based systems can live up to their advertised capability that's creating orderly, well-regulated systems. And since the advent of chaos theory, you can now dispel the catchphrase law and order, because you really get drama. And most, I mean, even today, you get, world-class pundits promoting law and order, rule-based systems as capable of producing orderly, stable, well-behaved, well-regulated systems. And mathematically, that's just baloney.
Okay, so let's do this. How about this, Barry? Tomorrow, let's spend the entire time session, as long as you want, okay?
Okay.
Defining rule-based systems, talking about the limitations of them, and
Yep.
let me interview you. Would that be
Okay.
okay?
That's fine. Yeah. I mean, I've been writing about this for decades, and I've
That's
written.
fine, but let me interview you afresh. I'll
Yeah,
ask,
okay.
hard questions. I'll ask you easy questions. And let's
Okay.
see how far we can get, because I'm not clear. I know exactly what you're thinking yet on this front.
Yeah, and chances are I'll simply go back to where I've written it up in concise paragraphs and simply recite those.
That's fine, as long as I get a chance to ask you questions.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay?
Yeah.
Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Enough for
Same
today?
time, same bat channel tomorrow. Yeah, it's after 1 o'clock, so we've been here for 2 hours, so you probably want to end this now anyway.
Real good. All right, Barry. See you
Ciao.
tomorrow. Have a good
Yep.
day.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Let's save the chat here for a second. Okay, go ahead. You can shut it down now.